Okay, I'm having a great, wonderful conversation with American composer Eric Klein. We are going to be talking about his CD just released, 2018, The Myth of Tomorrow. It's released on Navona Records. Wonderful, as I mentioned to Eric, just a delicious, diverse, wonderful sampling of all of your various interests and compositional styles and so on. It's a beautiful, beautiful CD, fabulous and very interesting work. And you have used this extraordinary 22 members of this 22 musician group in New York City, contemporaneous, very contemporary music, specializing in contemporary music, and also young and exciting. They're a fabulous group. I'm going to put their website link up on your page as well. My review is going to come up on this. We're going to have the interview up there. We're talking about performingartsreview.net. That's where that's my site, and that's where I'm going to have all this stuff. For the public to have a look at. And what we were discussing a little earlier is that, I did a search, tried to find out exactly who you were, and I couldn't find much. So can you, and it's deliberate apparently. I think some people, I hope I don't embarrass you, but some people apparently prefer to let the ego take a back seat, as it were. And you're a philosophy major, I guess, at some point, but philosophy is in your mind. We're going to talk about a quote that you use by a wonderful novelist. I love his work. I've read about 6 of his novels. We'll get there. But first, Eric, kind of give us all a little overview of your history. How come you got into music? I know your dad was a composer. Go ahead. Trouble?
Well, I started guitar when I was 12, and that pretty much took over my life. And my father, who was a very prolific composer, really insisted that I do classical guitar. So I kind of did that in parallel with playing the electric guitar. So over the years, I've kind of had different exposure to a lot of different types of music, and playing in bands, and then playing classical guitar at the same time. And I got into electronics, at some point. It was probably the early '80s, and got my Moog, my first Moog synthesizer, and I got into recording my own stuff on 4-track tape machines and stuff. And I started doing serious composition a little later. I was always guided by my father. He was a tremendous composer, and pretty much everything I know is through his his guidance and influence.
Also, of all these wonderful musicians and CDs I'm reviewing and interviewing, what I'm finding over and over again is the Gunther Schuller, third way. That's not quite, or third method. I can't quite remember what it's called, but Gunther Schuller essentially said jazz, and if you will, popular music and classical music are inevitably going to meld together into some kind of new hybrid of music, and I'm seeing it all over the place. Young musicians are great improvisers these days. They have a wonderful interest. I used to fight it as an old man. I thought, what are these young kids wasting their time on this stuff? They should be in the conservatory, all that old-fashioned stuff. But that's all gone, and I'm glad to say, and the new young musicians are with it on many and all levels. And I think your music also reflects this new way that music is going. It's fabulous. I think we've mentioned, or you told me before, that you were a philosophy major at some point, or at least delved into philosophy. How was that? Was that really a major or study or what?
It kind of came about accident. I was initially a guitar major at the University of Toronto in faculty of music, and where not coincidentally, my father is a professor and at the faculty there, and I didn't make it through my first year there, and I became a philosophy major after that. So, that's but I always kept doing music, but I didn't actually formally study music at that point. Most of what I know about serious composition came later.
Well, you're not alone, by the way. I've interviewed several people who have pursued other things and then come back to music. The reason I kind of set this up is, and you've told me off camera that you just like to quote, but that there has to be a little bit more to it. I mean, if you'll allow me, one of my favorite novelists is Umberto Eco, the Italian. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Italian novelist, and there it is. I mean, you open up your program notes and boom, right for everybody to see, big as life, is this quote, and it's rather obscure. That's why I'm going to ask you about it, okay? Here it is. Let me see if I can find it. I mentioned some of you have out there have read The Name of the Rose. That was very popular. It was put into a movie. Foucault's Pendulum, The Island of the Day Before. That was a great novel, and so on. But here's the quote by Umberto Eco. Quote, "I have come to believe that the whole world is an enigma, a harmless enigma that is made terrible by our own mad attempt to interpret it as though it had an underlying truth." End quote. What a bombshell. You want to help us out a teeny bit about how come you put that one up there on your program?
I came across that quote in the New York Times, and I'm like, I have to use that somewhere. That's awesome. That just levels everything. So
you've used that word before, levels.
Yeah.
Maybe even disintegrates.
Well, I mean, I guess the idea is that it's easy to read too much into stuff sometimes. But I wanted to have an album of chamber music that's kind of a little whimsical. Not necessarily. I didn't want an album that's like too dark, but I wanted something that was kind of mysterious, interesting, whimsical, but maybe a little out of the ordinary, but some familiar stuff there too.
And you've already described this sort of dual pursuit of electric guitar and classical guitar, because your dad was hanging over you, I presume, trying to make sure you didn't go astray into rock and roll, I presume, something like that. And the result, particularly on this CD, is a wonderful and very intelligent mix of electronic sounds, which I think you've mentioned, and real, how shall I say, classical music training. I don't know, I guess you got most of it from your dad, because this is beautifully composed. These are beautifully composed pieces and various instrumentations. I'm thinking of the piece that I love, Dream Fragments. It's the title piece for the CD. It's a piano sonata, but it's also, and remember the title, everybody, Dream Fragments. I mean, how brilliant is this? I don't think I've ever come across this before. Mixing electronic sounds to kind of enhance the dream fragments, if you will. Tell me a little bit about how Dream Fragments, this piano sonata, came into existence.
Well, it's kind of a conflict between the rational mind and the other part of your mind that goes off somewhere else, and so there's a kind of the piano parts are kind of interrupted sometimes by electronic flourishes and things that don't have kind of harmonic relevance, but it's made to be sort of like a dream. That things go in and out, things change, things come out of nowhere.
I was going to say the electronics sounds that you put in there are make so much more imaginative the piece. They're such great imagery, these sounds. It just blew me away. I thought it was such a great idea, and I think this might be a first, a piano sonata that also involves electronic sounds. And can it be performed in public? I mean, does it work that way, or is it a studio construction?
No, I have a recording of the electronics, and I've had pianists perform it with the against electronics. It works pretty well.
Okay. And I also loved on the disc your piece 1899. And tell me about it, because you mentioned in the program notes Quiet City, and indeed there's this ambiance of Aaron Copland's Quiet City. It's as a model for the temperament of this particular piece, 1899. Tell me the story. I think it's charming.
Oh, well, I wanted to write something in the memory of my grandfather, who was born in 1899. And in 1999, he would have been 100 years old when I wrote the piece. And I wanted something to kind of, when I was thinking about, 100 years ago or more than that now, I wanted something kind of simple and minimalist. And then that kind of evolves into something more maybe dissonant. I don't know. It's really my most minimalist kind of piece.
And I found it very reflective. It really took me back in time somehow. So you succeeded.
Well, thanks.
And there's another one, another piece, a three-movement piece that I think is fantastic, Hoboken Suite. Tell me a little bit about that piece, please. And the use of free bass accordion. Tell us about that instrument. It's fascinating.
Well, I always wanted to have a piece with a free bass accordion, which is it's a big accordion that enables chromatic, performance. You can write pretty much anything for it. You have to be a good player. It's not an easy instrument. But my father wrote a lot of pieces for free bass accordion. He had a colleague named Joseph Massarolo who taught at the University of Toronto, and he's a world-class player. And he had there were so many pieces they worked on together, and I was just like, well, I would love to have, a free bass accordion, something that lends itself to serious or concert music. Where there's so much you can do with it. It's almost like an electronic instrument.
And I had no idea. I thought a regular accordion could be chromatic. And also, you said freebass. You mentioned off camera, freebass accordion is a rather large instrument. Give me a kind of comparison, would you, so I can get clear on this?
Well, I haven't actually played one, so I don't know the technique so much. But it's there's no limitations as far as when you're playing the left hand, you can play chromatically. You don't have to play fifths and fourths and things like that. And I actually used Joseph Massarolo's accordion resource manual, which came in handy. It was one of the books my father had lying around.
So I was going to say, yeah, it wasn't just laying around. It was part of your father's collection of goodies. He lives on. That just came to me, but the idea of how our parents live on in mementos, in this case a memento that came in very, very handily for you in composing that particular piece. And I cannot let our interview go by without asking you, because you're a guitarist, where I'm coming from here. We're not going to discuss everything on the CD. I'm going to put up some excerpts and put up my review and so on, let people buy the CD and enjoy it. But and again, as I said, there's so much diversity and interest, so much different and varying instrumentation that you've used with contemporaneous. They're a perfect ensemble to work with. But then there's your bit, and it's 4 journeys for 4 guitars, all parts played by yourself. Tell me how that works. It always mystifies me how people can put tracks together like that.
Well, it's a guitar duo in 4 parts. And if it was a 4-part guitar thing, then I think it would have killed me. It wasn't the intention. I thought I was going to get another player to play the second part, and then it just, I better do the whole thing, and so I overdubbed both parts, and it became a very time-consuming project to do it right. But the nice thing about 2 guitars is that you can have these nice wide chord voicings. You can't really, on a single guitar, you're limited to 6 strings, and that can be harmonically limiting. But with 2 guitars, you can do some really wonderful things.
Mm.
Just
and of course, it's performed, publicly, yes, yeah. And also, let's just make sure everybody's clear. You haven't just been sitting around. You've written all kinds of music for various settings, including film and so on. How has that been going? And then tell me about your what is it, marketing business? Let's get an overview of where you are right now and what's going on.
Well, I've always had an interest in technology products, and over 20 years ago, I became involved with selling software plugins for a company called Waves. They were the first company to make software plugins for audio plugins. So I was their first rep doing that, and that opened a lot of doors for me as far as learning technology and meeting people. And I've always had an interest in technology as far as recording and producing, and all the elements of putting music together. Everything about it I find interesting in some way. So it's fun. I get to sell products that I like, that I use, and I've got to work with some great manufacturers. Rob Pappen is a Dutch producer, synthesist, who has a whole series of wonderful plugins for virtual synthesizers. Somebody I work with, and it's great to work with people on when they're developing these products. And
in the manner of producing, then this, can I say this? Slap me down if I'm wrong, but is therefore this your CD is your own first production?
So I had all these performances over the years, and I didn't have a cohesive. I didn't actually have a proper recording. So I wanted to get everything together on a CD, and that's when I approached Contemporaneous, because they can pretty much play anything you throw at them, and that's how I put the CD together. I couldn't have done it without them. They were great. David Bloom was the conductor. Very dedicated, amazing players.
So, as a producer, do you have the bug now for a second CD? Come on.
Well, I do. I'm going to have an orchestral CD. That's the next project. I've got another piece that has to be recorded, but otherwise that's almost done. There was a professor at NYU named Dino Getzo, and I was kind of an informal student of his. And he opened up a lot of... he liked my compositions, and he managed to... he was very supportive of me and getting a lot of these pieces performed over the years. And I had a series of orchestral pieces done in Romania. So that'll be fun. Those are all orchestral pieces.
We lost you just a little bit. Did you say something about they have been recorded in Romania? Did I hear something about that?
Yeah, some of the pieces. I have to. There's going to be some additional pieces on that album. It's not quite finished. I would say it's about 3/4 there.
Yeah, and by the way, as we all know in the music business, the Eastern musicians, if you will, since the Iron Curtain went down, all those wonderful countries, the Czech Republic and so on, recordings, a lot of us do a lot of recording in those countries because the price is right, even though it still costs an arm and a leg, but the musicianship is so fabulous. So
the string players, the pianists, they're fantastic.
That tremendous, still classical training. Almost Soviet classical training, if you will. Great musicians, and they can sit down and sight read, and I hate to say it because I have so many Hollywood friends, but they're giving Hollywood a little bit of a run for its money. What have I forgotten? Have I forgotten anything you're burning to tell me before we wind this thing down?
Well, I just hope that the idea of kind of esoteric chamber music. That's not necessarily just square, pieces without. I have electronics in some of these pieces.
Yeah.
I have kind of unusual instrumentation, and I'm also doing, for example, Nettles is the first opening piece is actually kind of a rock piece.
It's wonderful. I loved it. It's wonderful.
And I wanted something, really, heavy piano centric piece, but they're it's a short piece. It was made sense on the opening, and The last piece is called Hidden Places. That was the biggest piece, and that used the entire ensemble.
I was going to say it's huge. It's just a huge piece in terms of instrumentation and your orchestration. Hello, Dad, if he's listening from somewhere above you somewhere. Well done.
Thank you.
So, anything else?
I don't know. I think
because I think I've done everything I've done. I've run out of my questions. I think we pretty well covered it. Very, very interesting CD, The Myth of Tomorrow. It's produced by Navona Records. 2018 just came out in January. Your first production, and as you have told us, something else is coming up with orchestra coming up in a while. You used this. You went to the right people. You went to the ensemble Contemporaneous in New York City, and these young, vigorous, fabulous, curious, gifted musicians did you proud for sure. This is a great and very, very diverse album of your music. I think it's a perfect sampler of who you are and what you do and how diverse are your own styles and interests. So congratulations, it's a beauty. We're done. Thanks very much for giving me some time there in the whatever it is, 7:30 on the East Coast. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Daniel.
We'll see you again, perhaps.
I hope so.
Okay, bye-bye.